Running a business comes with a lot of what ifs, but luckily there's a simple answer to them. Shopify. It's the commerce platform behind millions of businesses, including Thrive Cosmetics and Momofuku, and it'll help you with everything you need. From website design and marketing to boosting sales and expanding operations, Shopify can get the job done and make your dream a reality. Turn those what ifs into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
Hi there, and welcome to Raising Me. I'm Adrienne Stein, a mom of three here trying to figure it all out too. Here we talk with the experts about the things we're experiencing as parents. And of course, a big thank you to our sponsor, Maine Health. I am so excited to bring you today's guest. If you have ever stepped on a Lego with a bare foot or dug through piles and piles of paperwork looking for that permission slip, or you have a stack of the kids' artwork piled up that you swear you are going to do something with one of these days, raising my hand here, this episode is for you. We are talking about something that can truly transform the daily chaos of parenting, getting organized. And look, I get it. It can feel so overwhelming. But today we're talking about some real-life solutions with a former self-described hot mess. Stephanie Treantos is here. She has overcome a lot of personal struggles, which she'll talk about, to get to a successful organizing business called Lemonaid Solutions. She's got more than 12,000 followers just on Instagram alone. So she helps families simplify, declutter, and create systems that actually work. So whether you're drowning in all the laundry or feeling so overwhelmed by all the toys, this episode is for you. These are learned skills, by the way, so give yourself some grace if organizing just hasn't been a priority or maybe it wasn't taught to you growing up. With intention and effort, you can learn how to organize and simplify your space, which, let's be real, can make us all just feel better in general. Check it out. Stephanie, I have been looking forward to this conversation for literally weeks since we first connected, because you yourself are a self-described hot mess. Mm-hmm. I can relate. In fact, I often find my house, you can tell how overwhelmed or busy I am based on the organization of my house, yes. Right? Mm-hmm. Tell us about Lemonaid Solutions, what you do, and sort of how you got here.
We could be here a long time.
Well, why are you a hot mess?
I grew up a hot mess.
Okay.
So I guess this goes into your question, but I grew up I was the oldest of 5.
Oh boy.
My grandmother lived with us as well, maybe 1,500 square feet. So what is that? 3 adults, 5 kids, 8 people. I always have to count. So there's a lot of us in a small space. When I was in middle school, my mom was in law school. She was in nursing school. So she was doing all these career changes and moves and where she was really busy. Mm-hmm. And so it was just not a priority. And I don't know if growing up for her, it was a priority. So it was kind of like the snowball effect. Yes. Where it just wasn't learned. Mm-hmm. And so, I had my own space. I was the only one with my own room. Mm-hmm. Odd number of rooms.
How'd you score that?
Very fortunate to have my dad's side of the family. I was the only sibling who came from my dad. Mm-hmm. And so my grandparents knew the situation we were in. And so we actually renovated the garage and made it into my room. So
really taking up all the square feet you possibly can.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. And so, yeah, I think growing up in that environment with a lot of chaos and a lot of moving pieces, my family just didn't prioritize it. So hot mess was my name for a long time. When I first started Lemonaid, I had friends from high school that were like, "Are you serious? You're doing this?
You're the one teaching people to organize?"
My friend Katie, I always think of her. I have a couple of friends that were really organized, but her in particular, her closet was color-coded and she knew exactly where to find the sweater she wanted to wear. I can picture it still perfectly to this day. And I think she was one of the people that reached out to me and was like, where did this come from? Which I understand.
So sorry to say this out loud, but are you sure?
Exactly. Yeah. So this wasn't something that I was born with. I'm not type A. Yeah. I'm type C or D.
Really?
Yes.
Even being the eldest
daughter. I know.
I mean, so like we could go on to another path there, but yeah. Okay. So this was not something that came natural to you.
No.
Okay. So how on God's green earth did you become a professional organizer?
It's like a multi-step process in my story, but one of them was getting sober. I got sober when I was 23. And I think at that point, living in a sober house and moving through that kind of journey, realizing that, like you said in the very beginning, my outward home environment really dictates how I feel internally. And so because I'm going through such a large transformation internally with the sobriety and that journey, like my environment really mattered. So that was kind of what started it personally in my journey. And then professionally, I think over the years, working towards that, by no means was I, even looking back, really organized at that time. But I had a friend who had done closet organizing in New York, and she was like, I think you'd be really good at this. I don't know why she said it. Because I wasn't.
But it just like sparked an idea for you.
I think she knew that I wanted to start my own business at some point and was like, you should do this. It was really fun. And so that kind of gave me more momentum to really work on my own home and build that foundation. I think for me, I didn't want to get into a profession where it's like, you do this, but I'm going to do this. And I think my life circumstances I had that mentality because, someone who was is an AA, sponsoring other women and showing them the way. It's like I lead with, what I do is what you do kind of thing, where I want it to be the same professionally. Like I'm not going to tell someone to do this if I'm not doing it.
It feels so good when your closet is organized, or your kitchen drawers, you pull them out and you don't have a million things shoved in there. There is that mental health component when it comes to organizing. How do you work with clients, in that way? Like, what are the things that you because it sounds like it's not just like organize this, do this, okay, you're good. Yeah. It sounds like there is like a sort of an emotional, mental component to organizing that you've really identified.
Yeah. I think, again, it's always about my journey and then wanting to help other people through that. So I work with a lot of type A people who are very organized, but there may be a room or two that they just like can't wrap their head around. Or there's like the junk drawer B or C type people that are like, my whole house, like I need help. So as far as like the psychology behind it, I really like to uncover what are like the underlying things that are getting you to this point. It might be external, like I have 3 kids and I have a business, or, we travel a lot.
There really are only a certain number of hours a day. So there is part of that is reality.
Absolutely. And I think for a lot of people, they're finding themselves in a project versus a practice. And a project is something that has never been done. There's no system there. Or if there was a system, it's really overgrown. Like they had organized at one point, but haven't done any maintenance to it and just kind of throw it all in there and it overgrows. So whether they've done it once or they've never done it, it's a project because it's something that has to really be uncovered. And like you have to build off of it to create a system. A practice is just the maintenance. And so that's where I get people to. We do the project and then they get to the practice of maintaining it. The psychology comes in there because maybe there's, I don't want to use this word too heavily, but like a shopping addiction or a love for shopping. There could be these external things that they can change versus the time that maybe they can't. But what I've noticed is looking through all of those psychological aspects to it and talking through it and having them understand like, okay, these are the things that I'm doing. That helps. I also think once a project is done and they just have to maintain it, it is much easier and less overwhelming than starting from scratch on your own.
Like small pieces, because you can look at a closet and just like, where do I even start? Yeah. One thing that you said to me when we talked initially before this conversation is we are responsible for what comes in the house. Yeah. Often as parents, we're like, oh, well, it's the kids have all these toys, all these clothes. sorry, but wait a minute, put the brakes on that. We are responsible for what comes into the house.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up.
Because
Because there's so many things.
Okay,
like, so many
let's talk
things.
about
Yeah.
those things.
Yeah, I notice that a lot when I work with primarily moms.
Mhm.
The dads are there and maybe we're organizing some of their spaces, but it's the mom that reaches out that's really struggling because they're the one that's
Constantly picking up.
they're the ones that's running the home
Mhm.
for the most part.
Right.
Every family is different, but so they're the ones that are reaching out to me, and it's, I hear it a lot where, the kid stuff, and it's just like so overwhelming. And it's different when like there's kids artwork. I had a consultation today and she was like, I don't know what to do with the artwork. I just feel so guilty getting rid of it. There's solutions for that.
Yeah.
But as far as the actual like going to the store, like my kids, every time we go to the grocery store, they want a Hot Wheels car. They're this small. So
Yeah.
I'm like, whatever, I'll pick my battles. But let's say it's something big in Target that they want to bring home, and where does that go? So ultimately, we are responsible because they are not out there buying it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe when they're 16, 17 and have a job and they're buying their own things, it's in their room. But we're talking about, that age where we're the ones responsible. And it's a hard pill to swallow because it's easier to be like,
oh, the kids have so much stuff.
yes,
Sure.
My mom did that.
Yeah.
Our entire lives. It was always like this house, all your stuff. It's always kind of like pointing the finger. And so I think for me, I really like to hold parents accountable for that in a loving way, because it never felt good that my mom was kind of projecting it onto me.
Oh my gosh, I've got the chills.
So I don't think parents mean to do that.
No, I know, but you're so right.
But ultimately, it's confusing for the child to be like, but you bought me these things. I know I wanted them. And I don't know how their brain even perceives this at that age. But I know at a certain point, I would hear it and there was like a disconnect of like, but you're the ones buying them for me. Or she loved buying stuff for me.
Well, and she probably did.
And enjoyed it.
Right. But then it becomes part of the clutter. And I can relate to that because I often think, oh my gosh, this room, like where we don't even have space for this. Yeah. But we did have fun going to Target and buying the new Lego set or the Hot Wheels set or all of that. But then it becomes where, okay, now what do we do with it? Yeah. Let's talk about, okay, now what do we do with it? So how do you work with, like, you walk into a space, like if you came over to my house, what would be some of the first things you would say, okay, let's talk about this or let's look at that? How do you start this process when working with families?
So I always start with a call and then a consultation. I want to make sure that we're a good fit. And I think this goes into kind of what we were just talking about, but doing an edit and decluttering routinely. And then obviously during the project as a bigger, like we're going to edit this space really thoroughly. I want to make sure that they understand the process so that they know what they're getting into, because some clients
it's not meant to be a one-off.
Perceive this as, a certain way. And, I don't have to get rid of my stuff. She's just going to like organize it. But I don't organize anything that you don't need. And so I make that really obvious. But as far as like the previous topic with, bringing stuff in and being accountable as a parent, the other component to that is I will go to Target and I will say yes. Sometimes I say no, but I know that routinely I am going to go through these toys with my children. I've taught them this skill of decluttering, and we go through it before birthdays, holidays, Christmas, you name it. And they know like, I don't play with this anymore. My son is 4 and he knows how to declutter. It's pretty spectacular.
Yes.
And most of the clients that I work with, like the playroom I looked at today, she was like, he's not going to want to let go of anything. We're going to have to do it when he's not here because he's so emotionally attached. And he knows even if something is broken, he wants it and he will remember. So I had explained to her kind of this process that I do with my kids, again, a part of that practice. But I think it also helps parents know that it's not, I can't enjoy buying things for my kids and as if they're going to live this really structured and rigid lifestyle of not having, these moments with family. So I think that's kind of like the opportunity and the silver lining in all of it.
What do you say though to a parent who's like, oh, my kids are not going to let this go? Is it like, is there like some pro tips on like how we can work with our kid? I mean, your 4-year-old's got it going on, right? But my youngest is 6, and we've had many times where I'm like, oh, Jack, you haven't touched this in forever. Can I let this go? Can we give this to another child or something like that? And you're like, oh no, I was gonna just play with that tomorrow. Those kinds of things. So how do we as parents then help our kids get to like what your 4-year-old knows is, yeah, I'm kind of done with that. Let's move on to something else.
BTW, FYI. Visit Nexplanon.com/RN to learn about Nexplanon. It's an adjustable implant, 68 milligrams radiopaque. Or ask your HCP IRL. Okay, TTYL.
So when I work with younger kids, they're basically like my client. And so the adult version or the child version, I need to get to know them and how they work. And so every child is a little bit different. When I talk about my son, I know that that's different. I think anyone can get there. Children are really impressionable and I think can learn. So with some parents, it kind of depends on them as well. So I kind of bring those two together. Obviously, if you were doing this at home, you know your child. But let's say like the woman I met today, she is like, he is not going to want to get rid of any of this stuff. So whether he's there or not there will kind of change what that looks like. But I always ease into it and I tell them, if we're to organize this space, they're going to love it so much that they can find all of their Hot Wheels and their trains or their Barbies or whatever, that they're going to really appreciate what we did no matter what age, because I see it every time. They're like, if I could like record these reactions, they're incredible. Yeah. That I think even doing it and kind of lightly getting rid of as like kind of a phase 1 to get them to be excited about what does it look like afterwards. I think that's kind of a good way to lightly get into it. But also if you're doing this at home and you have your kids look at a small little thing, one little bin of assorted toys or whatever, and ask them the questions like, are you still using this? Honey, this is broken, whatever. And kind of just like gently, but it's a reoccurring thing that you have to kind of keep doing so that they're like, oh, this is what we're doing. I will say my trick with my son. We like tricks. Is I tell him he's likely going to get something new to replace it. Oh. So, because if it's before Christmas, it's like Santa's coming. Yeah, right. You know, you're going to get or so many more. Or a birthday, yeah. So, I think it's like, you know, he might not want to get rid of stuff, but I think he also knows something will come in its place. He's not like, scarcity, I need to hold on to all these things because all my toys are leaving. It's like also acknowledging what's to come. So, same thing with kind of the decluttering, what's to come with the organization, what they can expect. And then also knowing that like they are going to get more toys. Yeah. Like that's the fun part for them.
Do you have any sort of like baseline, you know, I had heard, and I don't remember what trend it was, but where like, you know, if you haven't touched something for 6 months, you let it go, or a year, whatever it is. Do you have anything like that you sort of like lean into? Well, if you haven't put this shirt on for 6 months, do you need this shirt or whatever? If you haven't played with this toy, you know, keeping in line with the kids for 3 months, 6 months, whatever that is, you know, let's let it go. Is there sort of like a general baseline that you use to measure like what goes, what stays?
Yeah. So there's 3 things that I can think of right away. So when we're going through, we'll say, I'll talk about adults for a second, but let's say we're going through a closet and we pull everything out at once. A lot of the times they're like, I haven't seen this shirt in years. Yes. And they're so excited. And like, I would wear that. Yeah. So using the 6-month thing is okay sometimes.
It's hard to also in Maine that with the seasons. Yes. Like, so that's not necessarily a good example. Yes. In the Northeast.
I think that it can come in handy as like, you know, an indicator of whether it's loved or not. But then there's other factors like, oh, if we're pulling everything out, we haven't seen it in so long. I'm excited about this. So that's one. The second is I go off of someone's reaction. Obviously, if it's yourself, even for me, when I go through my closet is much trickier than if I were to do it with a client. Like, I'm like, you should get rid of this. It's outdated, blah, 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 whatever. So when it's your own space, it is a little bit more challenging. But if you can kind of tap into like what your reaction is, because that's what I look for. When I'm going through a closet, someone will be like, I love this. You can see it, you can feel it. But when they're kind of pausing and they're looking at it, it might be that it's, I want to let this go, but there's maybe something behind it.
What if I need it? Or I wore this to a special event.
Yes.
And
so then there's questions with that. Yeah.
So what about those special items that you're never going to wear again, but you wore it to a special dinner or event or whatever it might be? How do you approach those kinds of things?
It's always based off of the person.
Yeah.
And so I really like to tap into, once I work with someone for an hour or two, I can understand how much to push and not to push just based off of how they react for that first hour. And so I really just go off of kind of my instincts with what I think I can push and not push. So it kind of depends. But what I would tell people, if you were doing this on your own, having that dress in your closet isn't going to preserve the memory. There might be a photo and I think that's what people hold on to is the memory, but the memory's still there. Yeah. What it's doing is it's just taking up more space in your closet where every day when you're trying to get dressed for work or whatever you're doing, it's really just maxed out by all these other things that you're not actually wearing.
Everything shoved in.
I kind of reframe it as, going back to that ultimate goal is like wanting to be organized, wanting life to be easier, wanting to save time, whatever it is. If we were to kind of pull back the curtain and take these things out that we're not actually wearing, how much easier would your life be? And is that memory that you're associating with this particular dress worth that? Because you still have the memory or the photo. So it's just kind of a lot of conversation. Not always. Sometimes it's like, nope, yes. Yeah. But then there's those like more challenging, and that's where the support comes in.
There are a couple things that come to mind. One is I have got this dress that I wore to the Emmy Awards years ago, and I haven't even pulled it out, but it is taking up space, and I've got a million pictures from that night. That I probably need to pull that out of the closet, and many others too. But I also think too, this was like a trend in organizing. I don't know, maybe it's 10 years ago at this point. That whole idea of sparking joy. And that's kind of what I'm hearing with this kind of going back to that reaction, like putting your hands on something. And do you have that feeling in your body that's like, I love this? And if you don't, it's like goodbye forever, let it go. So that's, when it comes to adults in our closets, because, most people can relate to that, I think, at least in a little bit. But when it comes to our kids, is there sort of that magic formula when it comes to our kids and all the things that are associated with, whether it's their toys or their clothes or, it could be any number of things.
A rule that I really like that comes in handy with kid stuff, or let's think junk drawer or
junk drawer,
office, or, is if it costs less than $20 and it's easily replaceable, I would say get rid of it. If you're on the fence of, I don't really use this, but what if I need it?
Yeah.
Because if you have a house full
you ask that, what if I do need it? Well, then I don't have it. And then suddenly you have a junk drawer full of things you might need or never need.
Yeah. It really depends on what the item is. If it's easily replaceable and it costs under $20, you've been holding on to it for 7 years. Yes. If in a year from now you need those specific screws and you can go to Ace Hardware and spend $7,
so true.
Then do it. I mean, I think if we have a full house of all these what ifs, we're living in what ifs rather than what is.
Oh my gosh.
So why not simplify? And again, if it's under $20, I know that, for some people it might be different where it's like, well, that $20 thing, I don't want to spend another $20. But if it's something that you haven't used in a long time, that's kind of like a quick, easy thing to say.
So it's kind of around the $20 mark. Let's talk a little bit about the artwork, because I literally have a pile of artwork from my youngest that I take pictures with it on my phone, but then I have a few that I save that I'm like, well, that would be cute framed, because I've seen people frame them and I'm like, I love what you've done there. And I never end up doing it. I should. I know I should. But what do we do with the artwork that is so cute? And we know it'll be so sweet to look back on over the years, but really do we need it?
I think taking photos, there's a good intention behind it, but when are you going to find that? I have 15,000 photos.
Oh, I actually, we had a recent podcast on this. I have over 40,000. I know. See, organization. Wow. I know, Stephanie, this is really embarrassing. Yes.
So I think, yes, there's a good intention behind it where it's like, I'm going to preserve this in some way, but how are you even going to find that? Unless you create an album, but then, so it's just, so there's a couple of things. The artwork and framing it, I do it all the time for clients.
Yeah, it's so cute when it's done.
Yeah, it's just taking the action. So I think a big part of why people love hiring an organizer is because it gets done. All of the should, would, could, want to, it's executed because someone's coming in and making sure it gets done. But I love displaying that stuff. I mean, I have like
it's
pottery
colorful
that's made for my kids with their like footprint in it that they made at preschool or whatever. And that stuff is just kind of displayed in different areas of the house where it makes sense. And then we rotate, their artwork that's scribbles and crayons and marker,
that we could probably let that
go. But I actually just purchased, so displaying is one of them, and then like doing a gallery wall or something, or even just one, and you can fit up to 50 in there. So you can keep adding to it. And then once it's full, then you can look at it. So my next thing after that is I haven't set them up yet, but I bought, I forget what they're called, but there's plenty of different places to buy it. But it's a bin that is, a bunch of file folders, and it's for each grade that they're in. And so it's really cute because it has all the labels, and it has like a welcome sheet on the front where it's like, I'm in this grade, my favorite food, my best friend, all of these cute things that you want to remember.
Yeah.
And then a space to save some of the artwork.
Yeah. So it has its own space, and you can put that box in, whether it's a basement or an attic but it's all in one place and organized.
Yeah.
How do you, approach organizing and that idea of keeping organized with families of different styles, right? Because we all have different parenting styles. This might come more naturally to some families than others. So how do you work with different parenting styles when it comes to not just getting, but also then staying organized?
Yeah. Are you talking about in reference to the artwork or just in general?
Just in general, like after you've got, okay, we've taken on that closet looks great. Okay, we've taken on the toy bins in the playroom. They look great. How do you help families, regardless of sort of their parenting style, to get it to stay that way? Because that is the hardest part often.
Definitely. Yeah. It's like we step away and now it's kind of on you to figure out. So my philosophy with organizing is simple is best. And that's because of my root in being disorganized by nature. So something's really complicated. If I have to move 3 stacks of something because, I want to use the vertical space. So I'm going to stack. And they're not drawers. They're with lids on them. And I have to move this box to get to this box.
That's not practical.
I'm going to put it down.
Yeah.
I am not going to do that. Because if I'm trying to clean up, I want 5 minutes. And so from a personal standpoint of how I feel with maintaining my own home, it has to be very, very simple. And so that's what I do for everybody, regardless of how organized by nature they are. Simple is always best because they're hiring me because they got into this. However, every family dynamic is different, but they got to this point because they didn't have a system. And if they did have a system, maybe it wasn't right. And so I make it really simple. It doesn't mean that it's not robust in a sense that it can't handle all of the flexibility, but it's simple enough that anyone, even the kids, can maintain it. The other part to that is they're included in the process in some way. And again, families are so different where someone might be really heavily involved and someone might be traveling while we're at their house. And so there is some involvement on their part, but I try and have these conversations with them so that they know all of the things, the psychology, and like maybe, in a walkthrough of a closet, like we put these here because you have 8 sweaters or, like what's the reason for the layout?
For the why, like identifying the why behind it.
I like to know the why for everything. I'm the one sitting in, the chair at my hairdresser wanting to know what she's doing. I like to know why and how things work. Yeah. And so I think if I explain that, and again, tap into their personality, do they want to know the why? Some just are like, you do it, come back and maintain it once a month. I mean, there's so many different variations to what it looks like to hand off, but simple is number one. And number two is just kind of explaining and walking through so they have that understanding of why it was set up this way.
I think too, the maintenance, when you break it down, it is simple steps, right? It is many of these steps, putting the scissors back into the drawer, it takes 10 seconds. Or, when the toilet paper roll is off, replacing it on there, or the paper towels, like replacing it, just keeping things in their right place and organized. Each step, when you really think about it, only takes, 30 seconds each. And thinking about it more in those small steps make a big impact. That seems like that could, be a way to think about maintaining the organization in your home.
Yeah. No, it definitely pieces. It takes constant,
It's constant though. That's the thing, especially with multiple kids. Look, my husband and I both work. We've got 3 kids at home. They're all in different activities. We're often running around like chickens with our heads cut off to get everybody where they need to go. That, we'll leave the paper towel roll on the thing, which drives me absolutely bonkers, but that's another point entirely. But just all the little steps really don't take much time, and it makes such a big impact when you can stay on top of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I like to talk about the habits because I think that plays a role into how people, again, get there. And it might be a habit of putting things down, not putting things away, or I'll leave this for tomorrow.
My house
is not perfect 24/7, but almost always it is. Yeah. But my closet right now, I think because I, actually got dressed today, I tried on a few different things, it's not perfect all the time, but I will go home and clean it up.
Right. You reset. It's just doing that reset. Yeah. And I love the idea that this is learned, right? Like, don't, for parents who are listening and it's like, well, I'm just not organized. You can be. Any of us can. These are skills, and it's maybe you didn't learn them when you were little. I didn't. And it's constantly trying to teach myself little ways to be organized and to stay on top of it, to have that sense of control in the house. Yeah. So I think just that's a key message that I'm hearing, that we can learn these things. It takes time, just like learning any other skill, but this is a skill that can be learned.
Yeah. Absolutely.
If there was one thing, parents could go home and do today, if they're, in the car listening to this, or maybe they are at home, what would be the one place you would suggest starting?
I always tell people if someone is listening and this is something that they just struggle with, again, it needs to be a learned thing, not a type A person looking to refine their skills. And we can talk about that too, but realistically, starting really small. When I mentioned, if you're with your kid, starting with one little thing, it's the same thing as an adult because they're learning a new skill and so are you. So it doesn't really matter what age you're at. You're not going to walk into your garage and be like, I'm going to tackle this thing today. You're going to look at the junk drawer is great because there's not a lot of emotional attachment to it. You might find something sentimental in there. It happens. Yeah. But more often than not, anything in the kitchen, but like one small little thing, and it will help build momentum and confidence that, okay, I can do this.
Yeah.
So I think that when people get really overwhelmed, they're like, my whole house is a disaster. And where do I even start? I get that feeling, but I think you just start really, really small. And it might not happen overnight, and that's okay. But if it's something that's really a priority for you, whether you ask for support, which a lot of people do, but if it's something that you want to do on your own for whatever reason, you can. And it's just starting really small, and it's not going to be perfect, and you might have to refine it. The first time I organized my closet, it's right. Like you get better and better as you go with anything.
give yourself a little grace going through it. Like, it's not going to be perfect. Again, learning. You don't start out as an expert. You start as a beginner. And so each little thing really helps. Stephanie, thank you so much. Oh my gosh. Like, I'm going to go home and get organized this weekend. I'm doing it. We want to mention as well, we'll have more resources on this very topic on our website, which is wgme.com/raisingme. Stephanie, such a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Awesome to be here.
I got to tell you, I am so grateful for Stephanie to share her story and really her expertise. And I think that reminder of just starting small and keeping it simple is one of my takeaways today, because it is so easy to get overwhelmed when things feel like they're getting out of hand. But just starting with that one junk drawer or that closet that's been bothering you. I mean, who doesn't love that feeling that it feels fresh? When you open your closet and everything is organized in its place, I love that. I actually feel lighter when my house is clean. And of course, that reminder from Stephanie, we as parents are responsible for what we bring into the house. That was a wake-up moment, right? Like, hello, a little self-reflection here. I love that moment. So take that small step, whatever it is, it can make a big difference. Thank you so much for listening to Raising Me. I'm Adrienne Stein. This episode is edited by Megan Littlefield. A big thank you to our sponsor, Maine Health, as well. Please follow Raising Me and share it with a friend or leave a review so others can find this message. Wherever you are, I hope you learned something new and get to take a little time for you.